Hello everybody, it's Michael Harbridge. We are live. It is Thursday evening at 6 o'clock here in Wisconsin, and we're going to give everybody a couple minutes to get in here. We're going to be doing some bark texture slab work, showing you how to make bowls and vases and things. The sample that I had shown in the promotion for this, those pieces were raku fired with our jade gloss raku glaze. And on that technique, we just brushed one coat of the glaze on and wiped it back. And this bark texture has such deep texture that the glaze catches down in the deepest crevices. And when you raku fire, you get those cool metallic colors where the glaze is left. In the areas where you wiped it off, you get that black matte finish, that grayish black matte finish. So that's how that piece was done. But we're getting people are coming into the room now. We're gonna show you how to make those clay pieces. Super easy, great for any age. If you guys have questions while we're going, feel free to type them in. My wife Janine is here, and she is going to be watching for those questions that pop up, and she'll grab my attention and ask those questions as we go. We've got kind of rainstorms going on here, which is really weird for the 10th of November, but I'm glad it's not snow, because if it was snow, we'd have several feet of snow on the ground at this point over the rain we've gotten in the last week. So what we're going to be doing is I'm going to be showing you how to make slab bowls like this with the bark texture, and I've also got rolling pins here that I'm going to show you texture using some other textures as well. This is doing, and so that was doing a slump over a vase, which I'm going to show you. This is doing a drape over a vase. This is a slump into a bowl. And so I'm just using bisque vases and bisque bowls to work with, and we'll talk more about that as we get going this evening. I'm going to be working with our bark texture pad. A lot of you may have the version of this that was ceramic. Originally, when we came out with this, it was ceramic bisque, and you'd press the clay against it to pick up your texture. Once we bought Formaleaf, we turned it into a flexible rubber form, and so that's what we're going to be working with tonight. You'll see there is the large bark texture pad and there is the small bark texture pad. The small bark texture pad is designed for techniques like the bark trees that I showed over the last couple days, where you're just pressing small pieces of clay onto the surface and you just need small pieces with that texture. That's what the small pad is for. The large pad is what we're going to be using tonight, doing the larger slabs and things of clay. So I'm going to set those aside because I've got another one out here. It's really loud with the rain, so hopefully you guys, hopefully it's not picking that up. Oh yeah, you could close that door. I left that door to the workshop is open. So I'm going to flip the camera down and show you what we're going to be doing. I've got some slabs of clay already rolled out, and I'm going to show you doing smaller pieces and larger pieces. A lot of times with the bark pieces, I don't worry about the edges of them being perfectly smooth. I actually like that really kind of rustic edge that's not smooth, because when I drape it into a bowl or drape it over the top of a vase, you get some really cool organic edges on those pieces. One of the pieces that I show tonight, we will cut out a circle and do the texture on there as well. So I'm not too concerned about this surface of it having more or less around the edges. If I was really particular about that, I could take a straight edge or a ruler and I could cut this off and make it a perfect square, or what I'm going to do for the round piece is just set a bowl on top of it and cut out a nice perfect circle shape. With the texture pad, you can do it a couple of different ways. When the clay is small enough that it fits on top of there and it doesn't go off the edges, I will take and lay that piece on top and roll my rolling pin over it. This one does go over just a little bit, so I'm actually going to go and I'm just going to kind of cut off a little bit of this clay, because I want to show you one where I work right on top of the bark texture pad. So I'm just going to position my clay over the top. I can either use my hand and press it down in to pick up the texture, or I can use a rolling pin to do that. I do like using the rolling pin because it gives me a smooth surface on the side and I don't get all of my fingerprints in the clay. Now I'm getting, as I'm rolling, a little bit of this is rolling off the edge, and I'll show you how we'll go back and pick up texture if you do roll off. You want to be careful that you don't get too thin. And the clay, it's any type of clay. I'm working with a stoneware clay body. If I was going to be doing raku, I would use a raku clay body. Once I've rolled that over, I can take and flip this over, and I can kind of go like this and just peel that clay right off the top of it. Now on my edges here where I have a little bit where I went off, I can just take that pad and I can just press over those areas. And if I have any areas where I don't have good texture, like right over here it's a little smooth, I can take that and press it in. The nice thing about the bark is you don't have a certain pattern, so it's really easy to go back and just, if you want deeper texture somewhere, you just go back and press it into that area and get deeper texture. Or if you kind of muck it up as you're moving the pieces or positioning them. So if I want to do a bowl, I'm working with, this is just earthenware bisque. What I like about earthenware bisque is it will absorb moisture. So when I place these pieces in here, they can sit in here, they can dry or just get firm enough until I take them out. And I don't have to worry about them sticking. If you have a bowl that is stoneware bisque that's high fired, that will not absorb moisture, and so your clay will tend to stick and the moisture will get trapped in there. If the bowl is glazed or the bowl is plastic or glass, and you want to use a bowl like that, then take and place either paper in the bowl, or what I like to do is place a towel inside. And this is just a hand towel, an old hand towel that I put in there, because then when I put my clay inside there and I want to lift it out, I can just pull that towel up and I can lift it out. But since it's earthenware bisque, I can just take this piece and I can set it right inside this bowl. And when you first set it on top of the bowl, it's not going to go in real easy, so you need to kind of lift an edge and just kind of work your way around and gently push it down. And each time I lift these edges up, I'm allowing the air that's kind of trapped under there to get out. And I'm just going to gently press this down into the bottom of this bisque bowl, because I don't want to lose my texture. If I was concerned, or if I had long fingernails, then I would use like a washcloth or a cleaning sponge, and I would use that to gently press it down in. Don't press so hard that you lose your bark texture, but you want to press it hard enough that it goes onto the bottom of this bowl, so you have a nice smooth bottom on this bowl. And kind of let the clay just do what the clay wants to do, and it gives you a really cool edge to this bowl. Once this sits in here long enough that it firms up, I could take it out and I could put a foot, just do a coil of clay on the bottom, score it, slip it, attach it, and smooth it so that I've got a foot on the bottom. If I was going to be doing this with stoneware glazes, which this piece is done with stoneware clay, and the glazes that break, and when I say break, like when you put a glaze on and it kind of puddles in the crevices and it gets kind of a different color on the sharp edges of textures, that would be a glaze that breaks. And so there's a lot of really cool stoneware glazes out there where you'll get like blues, and then on the edges it'll be more of a golden color, or purples and browns and things like that. What you want to be careful of, though, when you're draping or slumping down into a bowl, is you don't want to have this clay going around the edge, that it will, when it dries, it's going to shrink and this piece will crack and come off. So always make sure that you leave space between here so that you don't have to worry about this shrinking and catching and cracking and breaking off. So don't fold them down tight if you wanted to bring these edges down. If I folded all of these down like this so that they were tight against the bowl, there's a good chance that as this dries, the clay shrinks, it's going to crack and break off there. So always leave these sticking either out or leave enough space between them and the bowl so that they don't catch and crack and break off. All right?
Is the bark pattern the same size on both texture forms?
So the bark is, this one is, I believe it's 10 by 14 on the website that this one is. And the actual bark, yes, it is. Yep. So this is all done from an oak tree in our backyard. So yeah, so the small bark texture pad, I understand.
The pad is smaller, but
the bark is basically the same. It's got the same, it's from another part of the oak tree. That it's got deep crevices in it, just like this one does. So yeah, good question. All right, so this piece I'm going to take and I'm going to set it aside to dry. Once it's dry enough, I can take it out or I can add that foot to it. Another question?
Yeah, can you put the pattern on the outside?
You could. I was thinking somebody might ask that question. So I could take and put a bark texture pad, put my slab of clay, and put another one on the other side. If I pressed it and rolled it into this side and then flipped the slab over and rolled over the top of it, there's a good chance I would lose that texture on the back side then. So you almost would have to have two of those so that as you roll over it, it's doing the texture on both sides. Good question.
So that means you need to buy two bark texture.
Yeah, you can buy two. And they're on sale. They're on sale for $29.95 for the big pad, which we just got 2 barrels of rubber in. I joked with the truck driver when he came, they're big blue barrels. And if any of you have watched the Jeffrey Dahmer thing or are familiar, he was a famous serial killer in Wisconsin. He had blue barrels, and if you don't know what that means, watch the Netflix show on that. And, all right, I'm going to bring this one out. Now I've got a larger slab of clay, and this one I'm going to do, and I'm going to drape this one. So I'm going to spread my foam out here so I've got a little bit bigger surface as I press the texture pad into it. Oops, sticky. All right, so now I can take the bark texture pad, and obviously the slab of clay is bigger than the bark texture pad. So I can take this pad and I can press this with my hands. The nice thing with this too is it's flexible enough that I could put this through a slab roller and roll it through and press that texture into it. Or I can take my rolling pin and roll it over this bark or over the pad and the clay to get the impression. And the really nice thing with this is because it's got such a unique, unusual texture on it, if I don't get, again, on the edges maybe enough, I can go back and I can just press this in and add more texture in areas where I want to add texture. Where I've got the half that it didn't cover, I can take, and it's not, you don't have to line this up so that it's perfect with that. You actually don't want to. You want to overlap and roll your rolling pin across, and where it overlaps, just don't press as hard. And so I'm going to roll over this side, and I can lift this up. And I've got a few areas where it's not quite enough texture, so I'm just going to go back and use this and press it. On the side here, I need a little bit more. I'm going to press it. What you want to be careful of is that you don't get it too thin. If the slab of clay gets too thin as you're pressing, the clay will tend to want to stick to this. So you want a decent thickness to that slab. It might get a little bit thinner on the edges as you're pressing. Add a little more texture here. And then I'm going to do, with this one, instead of slumping it into a bowl, I'm going to drape it over a vase. So I've got a ceramic bisque vase here, and I'm using the vase upside down, so it's kind of a traditional shape. I usually look for something that kind of tapers and gets a little bit wider toward the top of the vase, because when I flip it over, the bottom is smaller and it gets a little bigger. You want that to go out a little bit. If it's a straight cylinder, that will also work, but you don't want it going inward, because if that clay gets tight on there, it's not going to want to pull off real easily. When I first started doing this, I was taking and placing the clay right on the bisque. And I found sometimes when I did really big slabs, this one isn't that big. When I did really big slabs, a lot of times I got cracking around here and the piece would slide down on there because there's a lot of weight when you go with really tall or really big slabs of clay, and it creates a lot of stress right around this edge of the vase. And so as all that side clay is pulling, it tends to want to rip along there. So what I do is I put a bath towel or a hand towel. I've got a hand towel. I'm draping this over the vase. And what this does, it acts in a couple different ways. It helps the clay to not get caught on that edge and want to rip. It's not as sharp on that edge. And it also kind of holds the clay a little bit better with that texture, and it gives space between the vase and the clay. So if you leave the clay on there for a long time, it's unlikely to crack because it can get a little bit tighter and it's got some give with this towel, and it'll slide off of the piece even easier. I'm just going to slide this back and flip the camera up a little bit. And then when I grab my slab of clay, and I'm going to place this over the top, and then I'm just going to kind of work this, and I'll hold this up, but I'm taking the sides and I'm just kind of folding it down, and when I fold it down on those sides, this side kind of bulges out, so then I need to just kind of go and gently bring this in all the way around. And so sometimes I'll do this where I kind of make another fold so that the clay will fold in. And I'll hold this up and flip the camera up here so you guys can see this. And so this is what I've got then, is my clay draped around that piece. And then that will sit and firm up on here. And then I'll take a board or a drying board or a piece of drywall, place it on top of here, and then I'll flip this over. I can't do it right now because this clay will flop out everywhere, but that's what I had done earlier today with this piece. And so then I put this board on the bottom, flipped it over, pulled the vase out, and I've got my piece with my bark texture and my folds in it. And then I let it dry the rest of the way, and then I do my firing on it as well. All right, let me set this one down. Bring up a smaller slab here. We'll flip the camera down. We've got a pathetic dog whining upstairs that doesn't like it when it storms, and he can't be by us. All right, so this one, I want to cut out a nice circle, and we're actually going to do this one. I'm not going to slump it in a bowl. I'm going to actually drape it over a small vase, but if you want a round shape, you can place any form on here to cut around. It can be a paper plate, it can be a plastic plate, whatever you want. This one happens to be ceramic bisque. Set that clay aside, and I've got my nice round disc. Now, when I roll this with the rolling pin, I could have actually rolled before I cut it out, I guess, because this will stretch the clay, and I'll have to recut it. But this is one of Jessica Putman-Phillips' rolling pins, her snowflake design. I've used this on the last couple lives, and you can take this and add the snowflake design, and it's best with the rollers rather than using the handles when you've got this texture, is to actually press on the rolling pin. And I can see this is going to kind of an oval shape, which is fine, but if I want it to be round, then I can take my bowl, put it back on top, and trace around it. The other thing that you could use for this, for making your bowls and things, of course, are the GR pottery forms that Jeff makes. They're awesome. They're a wood product, and you can make your bowls and things with that as well. But we're gonna put this over. This is actually a ceramic piece. It was a ceramic tumbler mold that I found, and it makes for a great slump mold for glass. I also do glass work, but it works great for doing ceramics as well. So I'm going to put just a washcloth over the top of that, And I'm going to take my slab of clay, and I can go along at this point, and there's a couple little sharp edges on here, and I can kind of smooth this. I could take a damp sponge, or I can do that after it dries. Just get these chunks off. And then I can take this and place it over the top, and then I can do that same thing of just kind of working this clay, trying not to press too hard that I lose any of my designs in here, and get some bends inward. In this one, because it's small enough, I'll be able to just pop this, flip this over, and pop this out right away so you guys get a better idea of doing it. Now, if I was going to do this with the stoneware glaze, I could smooth the bottom on this. I could add a foot on here, but I probably won't do this one in a stoneware glaze. And I can take this now and flip this one over, pull my form out, pull my towel out, and I've got my nice little bowl. It's still very soft that I can't handle it too much, but after it's dry, I would smooth out any sharp parts, edges on here, and let it dry, fire it, glaze it, and I've got my piece that's ready for finishing and firing. Any questions?
No, actually.
All right, everybody's so quiet tonight. So that's how easy it is, you guys. It doesn't seem like we did as much tonight, but that is how simple it is. I just want to show you a few other pieces here for some of you. So the smaller bark texture pad, and the big one you can use for this too. This was a live that I did using the bark inside the clay puzzling molds and using one of Jessica's other rolling pins with the birch tree design. But that you can get really cool textures inside the clay puzzling molds. If you missed that video, I'll repost a link to that on doing this piece. We've also used the bark texture for doing things like the clay puzzled pumpkins. This is all the bark texture inside the pumpkin molds to get that cool rough texture on there. I've had other techniques that I've done too. If you want to do, I did the other night the Christmas tree using the texture on it, just texturing with the tool. But if you want to make branches on the trees, you can just take random pieces of clay like this and press them over the area of the texture pad, and these make great branches. And I posted some pictures yesterday or the day before of the bark raku trees that are really cool, done again with the jade gloss and wiped back. That's how those were done. But these would be branches that would work their way up the edge of the tree, and you get really neat texture in there. And that's where that smaller bark texture pad, if you're going to do this type of a technique of just making small pieces for a tree or for puzzling inside of a mold, you don't need the big one. You can get just that smaller one to do those textures.
Oh, Jan did miss how thick was the slab of clay supposed to be?
So the slab of clay, because this has deep texture in it, I probably started out just under ½ an inch thick on that slab of clay, because remember, as you press into it with this or roll the clay on top, it's going to kind of stretch that clay out and it's going to thin it. So if you start out at a quarter of an inch and then you start rolling it, you're going to have a hard time releasing it from this, because it's going to get really thin in areas where you've got high texture, and it's going to want to rip in those areas. So probably start out just under ½ an inch, and then when you roll it out or press into it, it will work really well for that. All right, no other questions at this point? All right, I want to show you guys one other thing tonight that's completely unrelated to this, but it's something that I want to do a live on, and I keep forgetting to make shapes to do this with. And with the holidays coming up, it's a perfect time to do it, and it is making custom decals. And so a good friend of mine, Melanie, is out in Maryland, and she bought the equipment to make full color decals. Normally decals in the past were like a silk screen process, And there's technology now that they can do, there's inks, pigments that they can make custom decals. And so it's an 8.5 by 11. You can put as many decals as you want on that sheet. This yellowness that's to it, that burns away in firing. There's like a coating that goes over the top of it. If you haven't worked with water slide decals, I would cut these apart, have my piece that they're going to go on, and I would put these in water, and then they'll kind of curl up in the water, and then you lay them down and you slide them off onto a glazed surface. And like the logo, I'm like, I can make mugs, I can make stuff that, picture of my daughter with one of our dogs, picture of our family. She sent me other decals here too, which I kind of laugh because she used some artwork. I have no idea who these babies are or whose cats and dogs these are, but this just is examples of different decals. And so you can make it as big as an 8.5 by 11, or you can fit a whole bunch of smaller decals on that paper. I've got one more sheet here of decals of more dogs and somebody with her golden retriever there, somebody with their lab. And so these get cut out. And so I'll be doing a live on that. I know that Melanie is going to be, I think, the January sponsor of ClayShare for those of you who are with ClayShare, and I'm sure she'll be doing some stuff there. But if you want, you can go to her website, and her website is Ceramipix. It's CeramIPICS.com. Ceramipix. Janine's going to type that in there. It's basically ceramic without the C at the end. Pix, PICS.com. And you can actually upload the photos there, and she'll help you through if there's any issues and things with the photos, and have your own sheets of decals like this made.
Sorry.
Did it
auto-corrected?
It auto-corrected it. Oh yeah, I see it popping up on my screen.
Sorry about that.
Ceramics, yeah. Ceramipix.com. It's all one word. She'll get it typed in there, and then it's a .com.
Dumb.
But great for the holidays. And I'll show you. I actually have
Oh, it did it again. Oh my.
a piece here that is.
Come on, deeply guy.
I'm gonna pick this up. It's an urn that we did for one of our dogs, and it's got a lot of dust on it. But this is a decal that we had made for one of our dogs that we had, and this is her ashes are inside this jar. But I don't know if it's really her ashes. There's a story behind that too. But that's the kind of stuff that you can do. It's really cool, great for making customized stuff and personalized things, especially for the holidays or any time of year. We did some
so it has an A at the end instead of
Ceramipix, .com.
Oh, it still changes it even after I send it. I can't get it to work.
Let me see if I can get it typed in here on my screen. She's doing it on her iPad, and it's.
It won't let me. It's already yeah. It's in there until I send it. Oh, now I think it went.
So somebody's asking, Catherine's asking, are those underglaze decals? And they are. They're basically,
There.
I believe,
Now it works.
they're China paint.
I think I got it too. So Mel makes the decals for us. We can't make them ourselves.
No, she makes them. The machine, I had actually looked at buying that equipment, and it was super duper expensive. And I looked at it and I was like, if I invest that much in it, that I need to really focus on that to justify the cost of the equipment. So it's a special pigment that I believe is like a China paint. And then there's this coating that goes over the top of it that allows the decal to go off as one piece. And it slides off of the paper, and you just fire it on. It's usually like a 015, 017 firing that you do on that. Just like anybody who's ever used water slide decals.
And I spelled it wrong with the A. Jeez. I'm just going to delete my comment. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, I think it looks like mine went through, and I'm just clicking on the link to it. Yeah, it's taking you. Yeah, that'll take you right into there. So. All right, I'm just looking to see. Oh, somebody will know that the mugger bowl is for sure theirs. Yep, definitely. And the cool thing is, you can, like I said, you can put whatever you want on that sheet of decals. You know, I did a big picture here, I did a small picture, and then I did the logo, and I'm going to cut those apart. So I've got 6 logos that I can put on something, and somebody will be getting mugs with learnfiredarts.com for Christmas, I guess. All right, I'm just looking to see if there are any other questions there. It's not letting Janine delete. Okay, let me see. I'll bet I can delete it. There we go.
Can you delete? Oh,
Yep.
Oh, you can delete. Yeah. Oh, so you
It's so funny now. For the longest time,
So you can't.
the comments wouldn't come up on my screen, and now I can actually
Well,
see
now
them.
there's
I
somebody
can
else who
control
does
this.
another comment, but-
I see Bridget's asking, what did you
Something
fire them
about-
at? Because she said 012. Okay, so that's, I would have to go into her website. That could be, it could be that it's a hotter firing. And sometimes it makes a difference to what surface you're working on. So if you're working on a stoneware surface, some stoneware glazes take a hotter firing to get because basically it's like the decal penetrates into the glaze is kind of my understanding. So sometimes commercial pieces, Melanie works a lot on commercially glazed porcelain, and so that might require a little bit hotter firing, but talk to her about that. I haven't actually used her decals yet. They're on my list of things to get done. So
Barb, I'm commenting to you.
oh, Barb, it's
It
picks.
needs an S
Yeah, it
on
needs
the
the end on, yeah, an S on it.
And then, so someone said it, so it's a separate firing. I think there's.
Yeah, Catherine. So it's you glaze your pieces, fire them, and then these go on, and it's like an overglaze firing that you're doing on it. And I'm used to the old sheet commercial decals were like an 015, 017 range, but Bridget might be right that you might have to go as hot as an 012, depending on the glaze that's on the pieces. So she was at a Fire Arts Expo. She had a booth this year, so Bridget probably talked to her there. All right. I don't see any other questions there. If we missed any questions, we'll go back and check those out later. If you guys missed my other lives this week and last week, I did them with ClayShare. I'm the sponsor for ClayShare this month. And so we did the other night, we did the poinsettia, and I would lift this up, but it's about 40 pounds of clay. This has been sitting and drying. That poinsettia was a project. I've got that video. I'll share again on my page. We did the textured tree over there as well. And then the ornaments up on the top here, we did those the week before. We did it as textured with the snowball design. We did it with the coil technique. You can go back and watch those as well. We've got all of the items that we use in those lives. Most of the items are up at learnfiredarts.com, and we've got a section in there. If you click on the shopping tab on the top of the page, it'll take you right into the live event special. So a lot of the items are on sale. We've had a ton of orders come in the last couple of weeks, and as of this afternoon, I think we're down to the last 96 orders, which still sounds like a lot, but my packing and shipping area is covered with boxes of all the items in the boxes. It's a matter of getting them out. Some of the sphere molds were behind a little bit, but we figure by Monday, pretty much all of those orders will ship. And there's only a couple items we're waiting for to come in. For some reason, everybody ordered the little metal tips for the Raider bottles, and we ran out of those, and we're waiting for more of those to come in. And we just got more lathes came in today. And what else? There's something else we're waiting for to come in. Slip came in today. The rubber came in. It's really just the sphere molds that we're behind a little bit on right now. I think all the cone molds that we got orders for the last few days, those are all pulled and ready to pack and ship. So
I don't know if I think this is a question Catherine said used on earthenware in cone 5.
So yeah, so the decals can be used on earthenware, and they can also be used on stoneware, and they can be used on porcelain, but the surface has to be glazed and fired to apply that decal, and then you do one more firing on it to fire those decals onto the surface. And that's where if you've got cone 5 or even cone 10 porcelain, you might have to go a little bit hotter with the decal firing. But Melanie will have all of, she's got really good information on her website, ceramipix.com, if you go there. And you can contact her too, and she'll do a really good job of walking you through anything that comes up. So, do I have high fire slip? Amanda's asking. No, I do not. We used to be able to get stoneware slip from Mako, and of course they stopped making slip, and Steve Berkmeyer took over the slip. So we've got the earthenware slip, and I did talk to him right when he took it over about if he was going to manufacture the stoneware or not. At that time, he wasn't planning to, but it may be something. He sold his urn business now, and so maybe he'll be doing stoneware, so I'll check with him on that. We had a whole bunch of Mako stoneware slip here that got really thick and dried up, and we just never really sold that much of the stoneware slip, but I think there is a demand for it out there. Otherwise, Continental Clay in Minneapolis, I know they have a stoneware slip. I used their stoneware slip before Mako came out with stoneware slip. So, all right. If there isn't anything else, we will let you guys go. Thanks for joining us tonight. Thank you again for your support. And I will be back next week on, I believe it's on Wednesday, with Clay Share, and it'll be at 5 o'clock Eastern time, which is 4 o'clock Central time, and we'll be doing clay gift boxes, doing clay puzzling techniques on it. So that's what we'll be doing next week, and then the following week we're taking off because we're going on a family vacation the week before Thanksgiving and coming home on Thanksgiving. So we will be gone, and our goal is to get all the orders out before we leave on vacation. I don't want to be stressing on vacation. So thanks again, you guys. We will see you later.